Welcome to another edition of Theologically Speaking. Your co hosts are Sam Horn and Stuart Scott. And today we have a wonderful guest with us, Michelle Benson. And she is here to talk with us about a topic that we engaged in
Mm,
just in our last episode. And I want to continue that discussion.
mm,
And the topic we were talking about is sort of the unstated problem that is in the evangelical church, in our pews,
mhm,
in our counseling cases, in our student bodies, and sometimes even in our families. And it's the
mhm.
problem of abortion.
Yeah.
And so we ended our last episode sort of walking through key texts
Mm,
that answer three big questions. Question number one: do I have the right to do whatever I want to do with my body?
mhm.
And the biblical answer to that is no. Your body doesn't belong to you; it belongs to God. He
Yeah,
made it, He
yeah,
created it, and He bought it.
yeah.
And so once I come to that sort of analysis or that answer, the second question is, do I have the right to intentionally harm or to bring about intentional harm to the life or physical well being of another?
Mhm,
And the answer to that is obviously no. The scripture is replete with our responsibility to love others,
mhm,
care for others, not to sin against others.
mm.
And that brings us then to the key question, well, when does a person become a person?
Mm,
Because if what's growing in the womb
Right,
is a
right.
person,
right.
then biblically, I don't have the right to bring about intentional harm. And
Mhm,
we looked at five texts from scripture that sort of speak to that and sort of very clearly lay out the case that what's growing in the womb is a
mhm.
person, not a fetus. All the other terms we use may be medically accurate, but
Yeah,
biblically and theologically, what's growing in the womb is a person.
yeah.
And so that's where we left off. And Stuart, as we took a little break there, you started talking about the intense pressure
Mhm,
that people have. And Michelle, you alluded to that very thing.
mhm.
Can both of you speak to that? Like help us understand what kind of pressure people, especially young people, have
Mm,
when they're faced with an unwanted or unexpected pregnancy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll jump in there, and then Michelle, you're welcome to. You've listened to quite a few women dealing with this kind of situation, but it comes from two different sources. Well, Satan obviously would want you to think, take the life,
Right.
but then their own thinking, internally. I remember Martin Lloyd Jones says the biggest problem we have is listening to ourselves
Mm-hmm.
right.
rather than talking truth to ourselves. So we want to educate them, as you mentioned last time. So just listening to their own thoughts. I'm too young. I have a life ahead of me. What this is gonna do. What my parents might think. All those thoughts are just constant barraging them, and then the pressures of the people around them. So their friends, say, "Oh, I had one. That's what you need to do." So the voices of people around them and their own thinking, and it is intense. To me, it's like someone suicidal, who you can't meet once a week with someone who's thinking about ending their life. It's constant. We talk like suicidal watch.
Right.
People have to be speaking truth and hope to them immediately and regularly. And so it's bringing
It's
in
true.
people, helping them
Yeah.
see the truth, hear the truth, uh, so that it can maybe be so pronounced that all the other voices start dissipating or at least go into the background. That's what I found. You can't just meet once, say a few things, and then, well, let's get together. It might be too late then.
Yeah.
Give it a week, 2 weeks to meet again. They may have already had the abortion. Just that the pressure internally and externally.
That's so true. I mean, I've, 15 years worked in pregnancy resource centers, and, we get to have one appointment with them
Mm, mm,
and give them truth.
yeah,
And that's why we always do try and do an ultrasound during that appointment or,
yeah,
shortly thereafter,
yeah.
because it's a huge decision and there's so many voices speaking in, and you want them to know truth about all the options that they have.
Yeah.
You want them to know that there are other options besides abortion. You could parent, there's a lot of resources. You could do an adoption plan. there's just so many resources out there. And a lot of people are alone. I think of a woman, she came in and she said, I have to have an abortion. And I said, why? And she said, well, I live with my grandparents. I work at Wendy's. I have a 1.5-year-old. And my grandparents said, if I get pregnant again, they're kicking me out. And I know they will. So we have this is a lady who's getting ready to lose her housing,
Mm,
any type of shelter over her child care.
mhm.
I mean, that is
That's huge.
intense situations.
She's trying to do some form of triage in her mind.
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
Thinking,
I got to
what
take
do
care
I
of
need to
myself.
do?
I got to take care of my
That's right.
son.
Yeah.
And if
And
I have
most
this
women,
baby, yeah.
yeah, most women that have had abortions, it's not, we want, sometimes they get painted as this wicked
Right.
person that was just,
Yeah.
it's all, and they're in hard situations. It's a no-win situation,
Yeah.
really.
Humanly, they're counting the cost,
That's right.
and that's their conclusion. Right.
Without God,
Yep.
it's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
And trying to come around them and first of all, introduce them to Jesus, who has the hope,
Mm-hmm.
and then also resources and, just trying to show you would not be alone. This, because they feel like I'm alone. I have
Yeah.
no support. How would I afford this? These are the questions that they have to wrestle through, and they are true real life questions.
And I think that's probably been the most helpful and uh, necessary adjustment in my own thinking over the years,
Mhm.
because abortion went from being this theological topic we talk about when does life start, what's growing in the womb. Here are all the biblical lines for that. Here are all the rationale biblically, and you reach this really solid biblical conclusion, but you don't enter in to the suffering
Yeah.
of the
That's right.
person who found themselves
Mm-hmm.
in an abortion, or I'm sorry, in a pregnancy that was either unwanted or unexpected. Sometimes they ended up there by their sin. They fell into sin, they fell into temptation.
Right.
We all fall into sin. We all are tempted and we sin and we repent, and God grants wonderful forgiveness, but sometimes there are unavoidable consequences, and a pregnancy may be one of
Right.
those consequences. And so now here's a person who was in a pregnancy. Sometimes it wasn't because of a sin
Mm.
Right.
that they committed.
That's correct.
Sometimes it was in a marriage, and all of a sudden, like you were saying, here's a woman and she's pregnant, and it's going to upend everything.
Right.
That's right.
It's going to produce immense issues.
Yeah.
That now her husband is going, how could you get pregnant?
Right.
And it's
Right.
like, well, it takes two. Yeah, but and so there's
Right.
now
And then there's a
marital
lot of
conflict.
pressure.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of pressure from husbands
Yeah.
to have an abortion.
Yeah.
What about parents?
Huge pressure from parents, which is,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm a grandparent and I think that's your grandchild. That's your
Yeah.
grandchild. But this is where they're coming from. It's the shame. It's if you just take care of it now, no one will have to know. You won't have to deal with this. You won't have to,
Mm.
you have your career, you have your whole life ahead of you. You have,
Mm.
but then you hear the story on the other side of amazing people that their parent was 16, their mom was 16 when they were born.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, look at my life. Did I deserve to die just because my mom was 16 when she got pregnant with me? She chose life.
Mm-hmm.
And look, these are pastors, these are
Yeah.
doctors, these are people, all people deserve to live.
Mm-hmm.
And just, and in the moment, it's a hard decision. And it's hard to see 18 years from now when that child's graduating from high school.
How do we create a culture in our churches where people who find themselves in a spot like this can talk?
Mm.
What are ways? Speak to me as a pastor. What can I do as a pastor to create a culture where somebody who's in this spot, where a teenager in our church gets pregnant, or a woman in our church is being? How do we create space for a conversation to happen that overcomes the shame, that creates enough of a welcoming place? I hate to use the word welcoming, a safe place for them to talk about this, given the shame, given everything else that may be there. And you may not have good answers. I'm just curious. I'm really asking that question because that's on my heart as a pastor. I speak to that from time to time. I actually said things from the pulpit on Sanctity of Life Sunday. If you find yourself in this spot, please come and talk to us.
Mhm.
But what are ways we can do that?
I think talking about it more, it's a reality. As Michelle mentioned, the stats, I mean, it's happening, but everyone's fine on Sunday, right? Everyone's
Right.
dressed up,
Mhm.
everyone smiles, everyone's fine. And you go, not everyone is. And there are things happening. I think talking more openly about it with the youth and in the singles and college age, where I don't even know, Michelle, you can give the stats on maybe ages. I don't know
Mhm.
if you have that information,
Yeah,
but
18 to 25 is really the
The main
highest
age.
age group
Okay.
that has abortions.
Yeah. So really addressing it openly. Uh,
Right.
so when you're talking about morality, um, what about consequences? Let's just go over it. And you have to keep doing it because you have people coming in and out of church. People are maybe around for 3 years and they move elsewhere. So that
Right.
age is coming through. You say, well, I did that. I talked about that 5 years ago. Well, you have a whole nother group now.
Yeah.
That's right.
Just, I think more
No.
vocal,
Yeah.
and then addressing the parents and grandparents and saying, should you find yourself with a child that has an unwanted pregnancy, or a grandchild? Yeah, I mean, you get into these.
That's right.
They're the ones giving pressure too. This is how you need
Yeah.
to think
No, that's
biblically.
good.
Hmm.
Michelle, you've been very involved in our community with the Piedmont Women's Center. And I'm familiar with that because of you and the chairman of the board, and been very impressed with that ministry. Can you take just a
Mhm.
minute to
Mm.
talk about the Piedmont Women's Center? Because a lot of our local
Sure.
pastors probably are aware of it, but we're really not sure how to
Mhm.
engage it. That's when you're
Absolutely.
pregnant, you go there. But how do we actually, the Piedmont Women's Center is doing a lot more than just speaking out against abortion.
Absolutely. The Piedmont Women's Center has been in Greenville for over 30 years. And their mission is we exist to educate, equip, and empower the upstate of South Carolina to choose life and to change lives. So it's a nonprofit pregnancy resource center. And every client that comes through the door hears the gospel, is given a gospel track, and hears a gospel presentation. Everything we do there is free. And it's such a great resource, I mean, for pastors, but for the community. I mean, if you're unsure and anyone in your church has, you think, well, this parent has brought me this daughter and she's pregnant, immediately,
Mhm.
that's where I would send them. She's going to be surrounded by loving people that love Jesus and that are going to support her and help her through this journey and tell her truth. But we, for free, we offer many, many services, pregnancy tests, limited OBGYNs, pap smears, well women exams, STD testing and treatment. We refer and help women find resources in the community, which is really huge because if you find yourself in an unexpected pregnancy, maybe you don't even have insurance. We help women with that.
Mm.
Maybe you don't have a place to live because, like we were talking about, you got kicked out of your home because of it. There's resources in the community, really, especially the Greenville area. There's a ton of resources, a lot of people that really want to help people. And the other huge thing that would be I think a great resource for pastors to know about is the child loss support groups that occur. They're a Bible study, and they help women walk through miscarriage, infant loss, and post abortive women.
Mm.
And they're a 6-week Bible study where they go through and they meet with a group of women who have also experienced what they've experienced. And at the end, they do a memorial service for that baby that they have lost. And it's very healing. It's so healing. It's the first time most of these women have dealt with this issue and the shame, the guilt, the sadness that they've dealt with for maybe 20, maybe 30 years. They also do parenting classes, which is amazing. I mean, we don't just, say, okay, you're pregnant, good luck. We offer that come once a week and they do parenting classes. And if you finish, there's a great incentive. You get a car seat or a pack and play.
Mm.
And so, I mean, there's just so much support and help. And that really is our goal, not just to say, oh, you should keep your baby, but we're going to help you as you keep your baby and as you choose to parent, we want to surround you and give you resources to be able to do that. They also, at the end of that, get a baby bundle, which is basically like a baby shower in a bag. It's hundreds of dollars of, like
Hmm.
crib sheets and diapers and wipes and just all the things that you need as a new mom.
Do you introduce them to adoption options as well through
We
the
do.
center?
So when the first meeting that we would have with a lady, we talk through once you're pregnant, you really have three choices. You're either going to choose to parent, you're going to choose to have an abortion, or you could choose to do a plan for adoption. And we talk thoroughly through those choices because we want them to be very well educated. You need to know what you are choosing.
Yeah.
And we're not involved in the adoptions, but we refer,
Yeah, right.
so it's not done in-house or
Right.
anything, but it's something that we refer to
Introduce
different
them. Mhm.
Christian adoption agencies.
Michelle, I'm not stunned because I've gotten informed about the Piedmont Women's Center, but I would bet that most of us who pastor or most of us who are involved in some kind of ministry would not have a clue of how much the Piedmont Women's Center is really doing in our community. For years I thought of Piedmont Women's Center primarily as the place that was trying to persuade women not to have an abortion.
Right.
And they used ultrasound and medical things to just pretty much, get ahead of an abortion that's coming and stopping that abortion. And you have been very successful as a ministry over the history of your 30 years. I actually spoke to the founders at a banquet I was at,
Mm.
and I asked that individual, so how many infants do you think, just off the top of your head, do you think have been rescued
Mm.
because of the Piedmont Women's Center? And he gave me the number 10,000.
Wow.
Now that's not a hard number, and he
Right.
made sure to tell me that,
Right. It's very hard to
But
track
but
that. You
he
can't
said the best guess that he could say would
It's
probably
probably
be
true.
about 10,000.
probably
And I
true.
thought to myself, that is amazing.
Mm.
But it's so much more than that. As amazing as that is, it's the whole you're a full service resource
Oh,
for the church. You talked about
absolutely.
parenting classes and
Mhm.
it's just so many things you're doing.
Well, and I have some statistics from last year, and we saw 3,213 clients at our center for free. Everything they from the and you want to talk about a beautiful clinic. It's nicer than any doctor's office I've ever gone to. If you ever have a chance to stop by and see it, it's
Mm.
beautiful. Very professional, very well run. It's just a beautiful experience for the women that come. But we had over 8,565 parenting classes last year.
Mm.
Over 2,500 pregnancy tests, 971 ultrasounds, gave out 662 baby bundles, which were those baby shower in a bag, did 587 women's health tests, and 273 women participated in the child loss support visits.
Wow.
Mm.
So we are just the God is just bringing people to us, and it's just such a privilege and an honor to serve the women in this community.
Well, I think honestly, as we were talking before about really some of the perceptions of a ministry like that,
Mhm.
and some people would say, "Well, you're just doing social things." Well, actually, you're living redemptively
Right.
in a community,
Mhm.
and the gospel is being presented
Mm.
through that redemptive pathway, and that's one of the reasons I'm very excited you're on our episode today. Michelle, you mentioned that you got involved in a center, and then you and your husband moved when he took a church in Illinois. And if I heard you correctly, you said you got involved in starting a center.
Well, in 2015, we were in North Carolina, and a center reached out to me, and they were really back then. A lot of the pregnancy resource centers were just had counseling. They had pregnancy test and counseling, and they realized, wow, ultrasound would be so helpful because it's hard to see what's going on in the
Mhm.
womb, and it's hard to believe at 6, 7, 8 weeks pregnant when you're pregnant that you actually are pregnant. You may not even feel it at that point. So they asked me to come and help make them into bring in the medical point, bring in the ultrasound. So I helped that there in North Carolina. I helped that clinic be able to offer ultrasound and got cross-trained in ultrasound myself as a nurse and did that for a lot of years. And then we moved to Illinois. That's wow. You want to talk about darkness. I mean,
Mhm.
if you live in a state that besides with big cities, let's say it that way. Um, Pray for those people that are running pregnancy resource centers there. They are constantly being sued. Fake clients are coming in, just
Mhm.
anything to
Mm.
tear them down, rip them down. And we I helped them start a satellite clinic. Just they had a basic clinic and we did a satellite clinic that was really close to our church in Schaumburg, Illinois, and just being able to reach that next community. And it's an amazing ministry. It's if you can get involved in it. I was so burdened because I didn't know anything about it the first time I walked in, and I thought, where are the women in our church? We should be involved in this.
Mhm.
I mean, you want to talk about, we always say, oh, I want to take the gospel to people. People are literally walking in the door and coming to you,
Mm.
and you get the opportunity to give them the
Yeah.
gospel. It is one of the biggest opportunities for gospel outreach in a community that
And
you
they're
can be involved in.
and they're on different communities. So even those who are listening to us wouldn't be
Absolutely.
around Piedmont Center here, but there's one in their area more than likely.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Most likely. They're all over the country
Yeah.
and the world, but all over the country. And they really need churches to support them.
Yeah.
They cannot survive
Well,
without
That's
donations and
that's what
churches.
my next sort of foray into the discussion is. So what?
Mhm.
So you've been involved in 3 different clinics. What do you wish if you could talk to a bunch of pastors?
Mhm.
What would you say to us?
Get involved, talk about it. Again, this goes back to if a teenager or college student or a
Mhm.
woman in your church finds themselves unexpectedly pregnant, hopefully they know, oh, there's that Piedmont Women's Center. That would be the best place for me to
Mm.
go. I'm going to at least start there and see what's going on. And
Yeah.
so I think that's another really great benefit of talking about it. We do baby bottle campaigns, and pretty much all 3 clinics I worked in North Carolina, Illinois, and here I'm on the board in South Carolina. You can go and just call them
Mm.
and or go on their website. They all have great websites, and most of them have a how can I get involved? And so
That's
we
good.
would do it either Sanctity of Life Sunday, and that's what our church is doing here. But also in North Carolina, we would do it from Mother's Day to Father's Day,
Mm.
and they have baby
Wow.
bottles you check out, and you just bring hundreds of empty baby bottles. People in the church pick it up, put it, put cash, checks, coins in it, and then turn it back in. That raises thousands of dollars, and it's easy. And a lot of the children in the church, it's a fun way for them to get involved. They like to put their coins in there. Also, you can do baby showers, and I've done that some with my churches with a lady, with your ladies ministry. You can do a baby shower where there's lists. All the pregnancy resource centers will have lists of things they need. You can do a diaper shower. We try to help the women, give them resources to encourage them that there's
Mhm.
hope. You can do
You
this.
have
There's
to
hope.
give away tens of thousands of diapers.
So many diapers, so mmany diapers. We really do. And over when, we had the hurricane here in South Carolina, and a lot of churches donated diapers, which was amazing. And we did a drive through and gave away thousands and thousands of diapers of people that needed it. Also volunteer, get a group together to volunteer for one of their events. Here in Greenville, they do a 5K every May. So it's a race, it's a big deal. And a lot of churches, I'll see church groups, and there'll be 10 of them that say, hey, let's all go work this event together.
Mm.
And it's a time of community, it's fun, and you're helping a really good cause. Or attend their events, run in their 5K, go to their Night for Life, and donate. A lot of churches will put the Pregnancy Resources Center, take them on as a mission
Budget.
in their missions budget. So those are ways for churches. But, even as individuals, one of the neat things here for Piedmont Women's Center is they do a prayer text. And you can go on their website, which is piedmontwomencenter.org, and you can click on Get Involved. and there's a drop down box, and you can sign up to be on their prayer text. And I'm on it, and I'll get, maybe every other day a text that says, please pray for a woman right now.
Wow.
She's having an ultrasound.
Hmm.
She is struggling. She doesn't have support. Pray for her as we talk to her. And
That's
you
good.
can, like, in the moment,
Hmm.
stop that moment and pray as
That's good.
the volunteers and the nurses and the staff at Piedmont
Mhm.
Women's Center is working right now, because it's a battle, and it's a spiritual battle,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Mhm.
that, for that child's life.
Mhm.
And so that's a really easy way to get
Mhm.
involved as an individual. Also, you can volunteer. I mean, thousands and thousands of hours. I was looking at the statistics, and I think they had 9,856 weekly volunteer hours. That's a lot of manpower that you
Yeah.
have to get. So we need volunteers, and people are afraid. Like, well, what would I say? You know what? The training is phenomenal. I can speak this definitely for Piedmont Women's Center, and I've seen it in other clinics. They don't just say, thanks for coming. All right, you go in and talk to this woman. No, you're really you're training to be a counselor.
Mhm.
That's what you're training. And so if that's something that you love, and that maybe you even already have some of that training, and you have God has worked in your heart, and you have a burden for women, it's just an amazing place to volunteer.
You don't have to be a nurse. You don't have to
No,
have medical background. You don't have
no,
to be a theologian.
no.
You just have to love people, and you have to
Love
love
people.
God.
Mm.
That's right. And you have
And
to
you
love
have
the
to be,
Lord.
you have to be willing to get in the battle.
That's right.
Whether you're maybe a stay-at-home mom, or
Yeah.
even a busy mom, or a working mom, or a
That's right.
grandmother.
Right.
And I know we're saying as though women were the only ones you really need, but men, we should get involved in these things too.
Yes.
There are all kinds of things that I've seen the Piedmont Women's Center do, the 5K, the
Mhm.
banquet, just so many ways to get
Mhm.
involved. I think a lot of it is perception. When you
Mhm.
think of a clinic, you're like, well, I don't have any background. I'm afraid of medical procedure. I don't even like to go to the doctor. Why would I go?
Right.
And
Right.
so I think you're doing a lot, Michelle, and the good people there at the Piedmont Women's Center, to help us understand this is way more than what we were thinking.
Mhm.
And there's so many wonderful opportunities that are there. So thank you for being a part of our broadcast today.
Absolutely.
Sam, before we end, we had talked about the topic comes up. Is there ever a choice, a situation where yes, the life of the child or the embryo, the developing person there it's going to have to end. And I remember we had talked about that,
Yeah.
and Michelle had some really good insight there.
That's
from
a
medical,
really tough one, isn't it?
It
For
is.
a
I mean,
pastor,
is there
yeah.
ever a legitimate? Yes, the life of one needs to be taken, and I don't know if
Well, maybe
bring that
I'll
up.
give a little anecdote, and then Michelle, I think I would like you to maybe talk a little bit about the whole issue of the life of the mother versus the life of the
Mhm.
child, and then we could
Mhm.
weigh in on that as well. But there have been two occasions in our congregation, our little congregation, that in the last, I would say, 6 years, where we've had two separate couples, find out early in the pregnancy that the child that the mother was carrying uh, was not going to live outside of the womb. That maybe when they were born, they would be born live, but they might survive for a few minutes or maybe an hour or so.
Mhm.
Mm.
And both of those families had to make a choice. They were counseled, obviously, by the medical community: spare
Right.
yourself.
Mhm.
This child isn't going to live. There's no feasible way for it to live. There's no human way. It's impossible because of the nature of the deformity
Sure.
and what was missing. It wasn't just that they were deformed and they were going to, be severely handicapped.
Right. It
They-
wasn't
it was
compatible with life.
Absolutely no possible way that infant was going to survive outside of the womb. And they had to make a choice. And
Right.
they both chose to carry the baby full term. And sure enough, they carried the baby to full term. And after the baby was born, they had that baby, in one case, I think, for maybe an hour and a half, and in the other case, maybe less than an hour. And I think if I brought both of those couples in to talk to us, they would both say, as difficult as that decision was, it was radically transformative for them. And I'm going to speak as a
Absolutely.
pastor. It was radically transform. I
Yeah.
can hardly even talk about it
Yeah.
sometimes. It
Yeah.
was radically
Yeah.
transformative for our
Yeah.
church to
Absolutely.
watch this.
Yeah.
Right.
We saw the redemptive love of a mother
Yeah.
and a dad.
Yeah.
It displayed the love of
Yeah.
God like nothing I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
And so I'm not speaking on the medical side of things. I'm
Yeah.
just saying when these two families
Mm-hmm.
made that choice to love that infant for the 9 months they would have him, they didn't start parenting when they were born. They started parenting. They
Yes.
did things. They
Yeah.
celebrated. They named. They
Mhm.
observed. They read. They sang to the infant
Mhm.
in that womb, and they gave that infant the best life for 9 months
Yeah.
until the Lord took that child home.
Yeah.
And it was redemptive parenting in the sense that we saw visually what sacrificial love was really like.
Yeah.
And so that's maybe an anecdote, and I realize it's way more complicated sometimes than that.
Mhm.
But maybe, Michelle, you
Mhm.
could talk a little bit about when the life of the mother really is endangered
Yeah.
and there's really very little possibility that the child will survive. What?
Well,
So
and I think with what you said, those are the hard situations where you are getting the pressure from the medical
Mm.
side. Like, what are you doing? Just let's just terminate this pregnancy. They're not going to live anyway. But I think if you talk to any of those couples or any people that have chosen that, and that hour and a half, that 30 minutes, whatever time they have with that baby is priceless. And they wouldn't take that.
correct.
They would make that same decision again,
Mm.
as hard as that is. They got to meet that baby. They got to hold that baby. They got to kiss that baby.
Right.
I mean, you can't, that is what it's about. That is choosing life. And, just on the other side of that, sometimes we do get a little with the terms, abortion is really a medical term that just means loss of pregnancy before the fetus can survive outside the womb. So that, a lot of things can encompass that, miscarriage, all of these things. And that doesn't, but there is also, a secondary to that where you are purposefully terminating a life before
Intentionally, right.
intentionally.
Mhm.
Correct. So, I mean, there are very, this is a hard area because this is a very medical and everyone has to make this decision for themselves. But, choosing life. I think if that is your goal, choosing life. I mean, there are situations like ectopic pregnancy where they have to go in and they have to remove. That is when, an embryo has, planted itself outside of the uterus and it cannot live and the mother will die. So that needs to be removed. It could never
Mhm.
be a full pregnancy anyway. Sometimes there's things where the placenta removes from the uterine wall and the mother's bleeding out. Well, the child is probably going to die as well. And these are these just terrible, horrible situations that we pray that, no woman ever has to go through. And I think we have to be careful that there's no guilt placed on these women, that these are situations that there is no option.
Yeah.
And that, loving and supporting and never, judging someone
Correct.
for what they've gone through medically that we don't understand. We don't always know all the facts and we don't understand. But I've had friends who have been diagnosed with cancer and the doctor said, you need to abort because you need to start chemo right now. And they've chosen, no, I am going to choose life. And and the baby was born without issue. The mom got her chemo and she lived. But,
You have
these
to
are,
trust God with that.
you have to
really
trust
do.
God. There is no, every situation is different. You have to trust God, get a lot of advice from your pastor. What does God say? A lot of people and a lot of support around you in these situations.
Well, we do have to wrap up our conversation. This has been fascinating. Michelle, thank you for
Mhm.
coming on.
Yes.
It's my
and
privilege.
Yes.
Thank
It
you
was
for
always
having
good
me.
Yes.
to chat together. I think one of the takeaways for me that I want to just speak to all of us who are listening is the importance and the value of Christian medical professionals
Mm.
who can help us. You gave some advice on this program just a few moments ago that really helps a pastor who doesn't understand. And all of a sudden, oh, that really helped me. I now know how to help
Mhm.
this person. So we should be deeply grateful
Mm.
for the men and women that God has equipped and called to serve in the medical community vocationally, because they can give us great help and great advice as we navigate this,
Mm.
obviously coming always to the Word of God.
Mm.
Well, that's our episode today on Theologically Speaking. Thank you for joining us.
Mm.
Until the next time, may the Lord bless you.